The next morning, she pretended nothing had changed. She moved around the house with forced casualness, her voice overly neutral, her actions deliberate. She wanted to act as if my decision to dump all financial responsibility on her didn't bother her. But I knew better. For years, she had used money as a tool of control, questioning every expense, ensuring I always needed her approval. She thought she was securing her power, but now, that weight was entirely on her shoulders, and she had no one to blame but herself. I sat in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, scrolling through my phone like I didn't have a care in the world. She hovered nearby, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't. Finally, she snapped. "So that's it?" she blurted out. "You just expect me to handle everything now?" I glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "You always said you were in charge, didn't you?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She was searching for an argument, a way to spin this in her favor, but she had nothing. "This is childish," she scoffed. "You're just trying to punish me." I leaned back, letting out a short laugh. "Punish you? No, I'm just giving you exactly what you asked for. You wanted everything on your terms, remember?" Her fingers curled into fists. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Oh, I know exactly what you meant." I set my mug down. "You wanted control until it actually came with responsibility. Now you don't want it anymore." She glared at me, breathing heavily, but she had no comeback. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "Don't worry, you've got this. I believe in you." Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, furious and powerless. And that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, I watched as she struggled to keep up. Bills started piling up. Responsibilities she had never truly handled before were now entirely on her. I didn't offer to help. I didn't ask if she was managing. I just let her deal with it. She tried shifting gears, thinking she could regain control in other ways. One night, I was sitting on the couch watching TV when she walked in, her expression softer, her tone more measured. "I think we should start working together again," she said, sitting down next to me. "I mean, we've always been a team, right?" I didn't even look away from the screen. "A team?" I let out a low chuckle. "That's funny. I don't remember ever having a say in this team." She sighed, clearly trying to reel me back in, but she had already lost me. To keep herself from snapping, she took a deep breath. "You're being ridiculous. You know what I mean." I finally turned to her, giving her my full attention. "No, I don't think I do, because when you had all the power, it was your way or nothing. And now suddenly you want compromise? That's convenient." She clenched her jaw. "Fine. If you want to act like an asshole, go ahead." I smirked. "I'm just following your example." She stormed off, slamming the door behind her. It was getting to her. Her frustration, her helplessness. It was written all over her. She had spent so long believing she had me completely under her thumb, and now, for the first time, she was the one scrambling for control. And she still had one more thing to lose. Up until this point, the battle had been between us, behind closed doors. But soon, everyone else would see the cracks. And when that happened, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. She had spent the past few weeks pretending to be in control, convincing herself she could turn things around. But deep down, she knew she was losing. She was exhausted, barely holding things together. No matter how hard she tried to act like everything was fine, I could see the fractures forming. She thought I didn't notice how she lingered at the kitchen table late at night, staring at unpaid bills. How she checked her phone every few minutes, waiting for a text from me that would never come. How she kept trying to insert herself into my life, asking where I was going, what I was doing, only to be met with the same calm, detached response. Does it matter? She was unraveling. But she still had one last illusion to cling to, her reputation. She had spent years crafting the image of a perfect wife, a woman who ran her household with authority, who had me wrapped around her finger. To the outside world, she was strong, confident, untouchable, and she was desperate to keep it that way. So when she received an invitation to a dinner party with our friends and family, I wasn't surprised when she insisted we attend. "It'll be good for us," she said, forcing a smile. "A chance to show everyone we're still solid." I almost laughed. She wasn't doing this for us. She was doing it for herself. She thought she could use this night to reassert control, to remind everyone, and maybe even herself, that she was still in charge. I decided to let her have this moment. But I also knew this would be the night everything collapsed around her. We arrived at the dinner, and she was in full performance mode. She greeted people with a bright, confident smile, her laughter just a little too loud, her grip on my arm a little too tight. She wanted me to play along, to fall back into my old role, the agreeable husband who followed her lead. But I wasn't that man anymore. As the night went on, she tried to guide the conversation, making little comments about how things were back to normal, how we had worked through some things, as if our marriage had just gone through a rough patch and not a complete collapse. I let her talk. I let her spin her story, and then I decided to remind her that this wasn't her narrative to control anymore. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of wine, and spoke in the same casual, even tone I had used so many times before. "It's funny," I said, setting my glass down. She always said this marriage was on her terms, so I figured, why not let her handle everything? The table went quiet. She froze. "Oh yeah," I continued, looking around. "She wanted full control, so I made sure she had it. Gave her the house, put all the bills in her name, everything she always wanted." I saw the panic flash in her eyes. She forced a nervous laugh. "You're making it sound like you ran everything?" I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "I mean, that's what you always said, wasn't it?" A few people chuckled awkwardly. She shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't angry. I was just laying out the facts. And she hated it. She tried to recover, steering the conversation away, but it was too late. The energy at the table had shifted. People were paying attention now, so I decided to end the game. I pulled out my phone, scrolled for a second, then turned the screen toward her. "By the way," I said casually, "remember that business meeting you had last week? Thought you'd want to see this?" Her face drained of color. The table went silent. She stared at the screen, her hands trembling slightly. The picture was right there. Her, sitting in a restaurant, leaning in way too close to a man who wasn't. Me. I had known for weeks. I had let her dig her own grave. She looked up at me, her lips slightly parted, searching for something. An excuse. A lie. Anything that could save her. But there was nothing left to say. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and looked at her one last time. "You were right," I said. "This marriage was only ever on your terms." I picked up my keys, nodded at the stunned faces around the table, and walked toward the door. She didn't follow me, because for the first time in her life, she had nothing left to control. I walked out of that dinner without looking back. No hesitation, no second-guessing, no moment of doubt. I had given her every opportunity to change, to see what was happening, to realize that the power she thought she held was slipping through her fingers. But she never saw it, not until it was too late.